Hi, it's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and I've had a request for a video showing how I do acrylic pouring. Now, if you've been watching my vlogs, you know that lately I've been into this method of abstract painting, and I've been showing some of my pieces. I didn't really think about making a video about this because there are quite a few videos already on YouTube that explain various ways people do acrylic pouring. But since I had a request, I thought I would do a video. Now, I'm actually thinking of doing a series of videos about acrylic pouring and showing some experimentations that I'll be trying in the future and different surfaces that I'll do the acrylic pouring on. But for this first video, I'm going to call this an introduction to acrylic pouring. And I just want to say on the outset that I am not an expert in acrylic pouring. What I know about acrylic pouring, I have learned by watching YouTube videos. There are some excellent resources out there, and I'm starting on my channel to post playlists of various acrylic pouring videos that I have found useful. So if you go to my channel and look down at Create a Playlist section, you will see some of these. And this will always be changing because I'll keep adding some to that as time goes on. So that's a bit of a resource that I am providing for you there. Okay, so in this video, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to show you a couple of samples and explain the techniques. And then I'm going to actually do a pour and show you what I do. Now, there are a lot of different ways of doing these pours. There's a lot of different ways of mixing up your pouring material. And it's all hit and miss. As far as I'm concerned, it's hit and miss because you never know what you're going to get. So, in one way, you have to kind of let yourself open, or let yourself be open to this idea of pouring. That you may have some that you don't like, and you're going to have others that are going to astound you. So just go with the flow. And I think, as far as art is concerned, I think this is a very relaxing technique because you don't really have to know how to actually draw figures or landscapes. It's just a question of mixing up the paint and getting something that you like by random chance. 9 times out of 10, I find that most of the pours I really like. If you have a pour you don't like and you've done it on canvas, and canvas can be expensive, you can always paint over it. Simple as that. So, I want to show you a couple of samples first of all. These are very recent ones. I've done quite a few already in the past, and I have them hanging on the wall actually in my craft room, so I don't want to take them down. But this will give you a basic idea. This is a pour I did about a week ago, and yeah, I don't know which way to turn it yet. Which way I like best. I think I'll go this way for now. Okay, some features on this. First of all, you'll notice there's a bit of a glare on it. That's because, as one of the finishing steps for most of my acrylic pours, I will paint, put a varnish layer over top of this. Actually, I'll put several layers just to make it glossy and smooth. It also preserves the acrylic paint underneath. Now, this particular piece has some glitter embedded in there as well, and maybe one of my future videos I'll do some experimentation with glitter and mica powders and things like that. But you'll notice the randomness of the pattern here. This was done by doing something called a dirty pour, which is actually what I'm going to show you in this video, how to do that. Here's another one that was also a dirty pour, different colors. And that's the thing, you know, you experiment with your colors, mixing them around and see what you get. And on this one, you'll see these things here, these little areas that look like little circles, little holes. Those are referred to as cells. Now, there's all kinds of videos about getting cells and what formulas you use and the additives you put in your paint to get cells. But basically, the cells are, I think, paint reacting to other layers of paint and to silicone or alcohol or the water that you mix into your paints, so this rises to the surface. There are different methods too to help them rise to the surface. A lot of people torch using a little, you know, one of those kitchen gadget torches that you choose for making creme brulee or something like that, and they just very lightly and very quickly go over the surface with the torch, and I am going to show you that. I'm going to do that in this video to bring up some of the cells. I've seen other people use heat gun the kind of things you use when you're doing powder embossing, that kind of thing. But I find that sometimes I get cells, sometimes I don't get cells, and I'm really not sure what way will give me cells every time. But cells are not the be-all and the end-all of these creations. This is another type of pour, and maybe this way is the best way. This pour is, instead of doing what I'm going to do today, which is a dirty pour, you pour paint in different spots, put more paint on top of those spots, run it around on the board, as you'll see me do that today, and then I just took a popsicle stick and ran it through the paint to get these lines and patterns in here. So that's going to be another future video to show this particular method. There's also another method called swiping. This is not a swipe. It started out as a swipe. I didn't like the way it was going. Actually, this piece I am not fond of because I don't like my color combination, quite frankly. However, that's what you get sometimes. But again, you can see I drizzled the paint on here and let it run together. And as I said, this one didn't really turn out that great, but I might use it as a background for a mixed media piece. So there's still potential here. All right, so those are just a few samples of the many that I've done. I have done pours on other surfaces. I've done them on canvas board. I've done them on old records, like 33 and RPM vinyl records, and that's going to be a video. I'll show that because I've got a neat little device that I use for making those kind of what I call a spin pour. And also making acrylic skins, which is basically pouring this material on something you can peel it off from. And I'll probably make a video about that as well. In fact, I'll show you what a skin looks like. This is a skin. This was actually leftover paint, and I poured it on. Now, everybody talks about freezer paper. I found something else because I've been having trouble locating freezer paper, at least in stores. I know I can get it online, but I was trying to avoid ordering it online if I can pick it up in one of my local Walmart or Canadian Tire or something like that. But this is basically a skin. It's a piece of the paint was dry, and you can overlay these on other pieces of artwork for some neat effects. So that's a general overview. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the equipment you need for the pour I'm going to do today and how to get it all set up. So I've mixed up two of my colors already off camera, my black and my pewter. But now I'm going to show you how I mix these up with the white. So I poured in some white paint, and I have, it's really, you eyeball it how much you think you might need. I oftentimes put too much, but sometimes it's better to have too much than too little because you want to be able to cover your entire canvas. So I have my paint in here. Next thing I'm going to add is some of the pouring medium, which I said will make this a little bit more fluid. Again, I just give a couple of squirts in for this, and then I'm going to add a little water. Now, at first, I'm not going to add too much water, just a tiny amount, that's all. And then I'm going to mix this all around. Give it a good stir. Now, in the case of the pewter, I used the tube paints, and it took a little bit more of the water and pouring medium to get it to the fluid consistency that I want it to be at. And it took a while to stir it too. You do want to spend some time mixing this up pretty well. Now you can check your consistency. I've seen different videos where people have different ways of deciding how thick this is going to be. You don't want it too thick, but then again, you don't want it way too runny either. So if you lift up the stick and it kind of, get that in shot, drips off. Now that to me is still a little too thick. So all I need to do is just add a little bit more water, not too much. And stir it in. And you keep doing this until you get the consistency you want. Now I heard another video on another YouTube video, the person said you wanted it to be sort of the consistency of pancake batter, which I thought was kind of interesting. So let's see if I got pancake batter. Not yet. Still need a little bit more water. I want it to just slowly drip off my stir stick. Yeah, that's pretty good, I think. Okay, so I just give these another stir. And now I'm going to add my silicone. Now again, the whole idea of adding the silicone is to get those things called cells. So, how much? I don't know. I just sort of give it, it's kind of thick, so I give it a dollop. I don't know if that's a scientific way of saying it or not. I mixed up a little bit more black than I think I'm going to need. Now, this you don't want to stir too vigorously. You just sort of want to fold the silicone into your paint. You may see, or you may not see, a reaction in your cup. You might see right in the paint in the cup, cells starting to appear. Am I? Not really. So, I don't know if I've got enough in. I'm going to try. I'm just going to add a little bit more. Again, I have no idea because nobody seems to have a really good recipe for this. Now, I have seen some videos where people actually weigh out on an electronic scale all of the stuff that goes into it. And you want to know, quite frankly, I think that's way too much work. And regardless of them doing that, I don't think they're necessarily getting the cells either. It's not the end of the world if I don't get cells. They're pretty. Also, paints, even if they come from the same company, are different, have a different consistency. And so that, I think, has a bearing on whether you get cells or not. Okay, so I've got my paints mixed up for this. And I'm going to do a dirty pour, so I need an empty cup. But before I do the use that cup, I've got to set up my area here. And so I'll come back once I have that set up and show you what I've done. Okay, so what I've got is an old cafeteria tray. And it's got some raised sides on it, which will help keep my mess in one area nicely contained. And I've lined this with actually disposable paint palette paper. But the reason I'm doing this time is because this has the consistency of what I think freezer paper is supposed to be like. And it's what I showed you that one skin earlier that I pulled off. I had poured some leftover paint onto a piece of this and it came off very nicely. So there's going to be a lot of drips. So why waste them? Those will make acrylic skins once they dry. So that's on top of my tray. Then I have some disposable drinking cups. Now these ones you see I've used, but I didn't have paint in them. I used them as a prop to lift up my canvas on the tray because you're going to have drippage, right? And you want that drippage to fall down. So you need something to support your canvas. So you just turn these cups upside down and put your canvas on top of it. Now let's get in shot here. This is difficult to do on where I'm shooting this because I don't usually do it here in this area, my craft room. I have another table off to the side, but in order to get my system all hooked up so you could see it, I'd have to run some cables and whatnot, and so I'm not going to bother to do that. I'll do this here. Okay, so I've got my canvas sitting on top of those cups. Some people put little push pins and make it like legs. They sit lower. But I find this works okay as well. Now, I've got to make my dirty pour. So I'm just going to give each one of these cups of paint a bit of a stir. And then I'm going to take an empty cup, clean cup, and I'm going to pour a little bit of paint in each one. Now, I'm doing this in layers, so whatever goes on the bottom is the last thing that come out of the cup. So you might want to think about how that's going to look. So I think I'm going to start with the black on this. Hey, there goes my clock. Oops, I said clock. Okay. Let's pour this in. Not pouring the whole thing. Oops, got a little on my canvas, but that's not going to hurt it. And then I'm going to put, oops, okay. Pour a little white in. And then, I'm just going to set that there for a minute. I'm going to put in my pewter. Now remember, I'm not sure how these colors are going to work out. Now you don't stir this. You leave it like that, just in the cup. And then this is called a dirty pour. So let me wipe off my hand for a second. Have paper towels, baby wipes handy. This is a messy process. Okay, so this is called a dirty pour because I've got all my paints in one cup. As I said, do not stir them. And now I'm going to, this is the flip cup method. I'm going to turn this cup upside down on this canvas. So how do I do that? Okay, it's difficult with the way my camera's set up here, but I'm putting that on top and flipping it over. Oh shoot, that was not really what I wanted it to do right off the bat, but it's okay. It'll work out. So you let it sit for just a couple of seconds to get most of the paint out of it. Open it up, and away it goes. Now, this is fairly fluid. You can see it's running out, and I'm going to let it just do that little run thing, and then I'm going to try to direct this. I've got cells already coming up, which is quite interesting. So then you just tilt it and sort of move the paints around, and this is where it gets messy. And you're just manipulating the paints where you want them to go. You can see how messy this gets. Sorry you can't see all of this in here. It's awkward with this camera, but I think you get the idea. You do want to drip down on the sides, and I'll show you how to finish the sides off in a moment. And this is really where the creativity comes in the sense that you are, to a point, controlling the flow of the paint. You can see now why I recommended gloves. And I want to coat the whole board. Now, I've got a little problem. That's looking pretty good though, but down in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little patch job. I'm just going to add a little white, maybe too much white, and a little more of the pewter. And I'm just going to let that spread a little bit, and then I'm going to get it to run. Now, I think I need to add a little black. Now you see, if when I did that pour, I had a little bit more paint in the cup, I probably would have been able to have covered the whole surface. Okay, I'm trying to get this big black blotch to thin out a little bit. if you just heard my stomach growl or not. Probably need something to eat. Haven't had anything to eat today. This almost looks good enough to eat, doesn't it? Okay, it's coming. You have to have some patience with this, because the paint is still moving. It's not moving very fast, but it's still moving. So I'm just letting it drip off down here at the bottom. Just a little bit more. Give it a little shake. That sometimes helps. Okay, I'll leave that right there like that. Alright, now I didn't get some up in that corner up here, but here's where the gloves come in handy. Okay, so first of all, I got drippage down here, right? So I just take a little bit of that drippage and I just tap it along here. Now I've got some white spots of canvas on my corners showing up here, so I'm just doing it. And then you go around. In any spot where there's bare canvas showing, just tap it with your finger. You can use a paintbrush for this too, but I don't bother. If you need a little extra paint, just pick up some of the drippage. Just make sure all your edges are covered nicely. Hard part is seeing here, so I'm just going to spin this around so I can take a closer look. Oh yeah, I didn't get much paint up here at this top part. Now, when it dries, and if you still see some exposed canvas in spots, you can always do a light touch-up with just some paint right out of the bottle. I don't know if I'll get much of a skin from the stuff that's on the bottom here, but that's okay. I might get some over here. Nope, there's a spot there I missed. Shoot, flipped some of that paint on my computer. Okay, this is why I don't usually do it in this area here. Okay. That's looking really good. Now, what about cells? I really didn't get a lot of cells. I'm not worried about that, but there's something I can try, and that's to torch it. Now, you could use a heat gun like you might use if you're doing some powder embossing, that kind of thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this torch. Now you're working with a flame here, so you got to be careful, all right? I did set one of my canvases on fire one day, so just saying, you got to be careful. Let's get this in shot. So this is one of those, little torches you use for making creme brulee or whatever, a kitchen torch. And you just wave it over the top of it and see what happens. And I'm not seeing much of a reaction, so I'm really not getting any cells. And really, that's more time than needed to do with the torch. It doesn't matter. The more you torch it, it's not going to get you more cells. If you're going to get cells, you're going to get cells. But I'm liking this. I am. So I'm happy with the way this looks right now. Now there's some tiny little cells poking up over here I see. I'm going to set this aside to dry, and it will change slightly. Again, it depends on how thick your paint was, because it will continue to move and to blend a little bit, but I'm hoping most of it's going to stay the way it is right now. I may get a few more little cells coming up, and that's okay. As far as what I often do with the bottom is, if there's, like, you'll get the drips, I just run my finger lightly along the very bottom of the canvas just to pick off some of those drips. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to wipe off my hand, and I'm going to set this off to the side to dry. Now, usually I let it take a day to dry. I won't touch this again probably until tomorrow. And what I will do tomorrow is that I will varnish it. And I don't know if you just brush it on. It's a liquid varnish, polymer varnish. I usually use gloss. You could use matte though. And I just pour a little in the center and I brush it on, and I make my brush strokes go one way. I do the edges as well. Let it sit and dry, and I'll apply another coat, and oftentimes I'll put 3 or 4 coats on depending on how glossy I want it to get. Now I'm going to come back in a moment and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this leftover paint. I still have a fair amount of paint left over, so what I'm going to do is a different method. Instead of doing a dirty pour, which is where I pour all 3 colors into 1 cup and then dump them onto the canvas, I'm going to pour the colors on one at a time and see what happens. So I'm going to start with the black. I'm just going to stir that up again. And you know, I think I might add, do I have any silicone left in this little thing? Not a lot. But I do have a different kind of silicone. In this bottle is a spray silicone. I just sprayed it into the bottle, and it's the one that I bought at Canadian Tire, and it's a lubricant. So just pull this off. I will just pull this off. I got these gloves on and they're not gripping anything. Shoot, I can't get it. Okay, you want to know something? I'll just do it this way. And I'm going to see, I'm just going to put a little bit in. And I'm going to do that into my other ones. They're off camera, I know, I'm sorry. Just putting in a, you know, I don't know, maybe a tablespoon, teaspoon, I don't know. Give each one just a gentle stir. And then I'm going to pour in different spots. So this is just a little 6x6 canvas. Put a little white on top of that. And then my pewter. And I suppose I could put some over here. And a little bit over here. I'm really, there's no rhyme or reason to how I'm pouring these paints on. I'm just filling the canvas. And a little bit more of the pewter. Okay. And now I'm just going to tip it. Get it to move a little bit. Cover my corners. How's that looking? Too much pewter? Should I have a little bit more black? I could try that. Just drizzle a little black up here. Just to break it up. Almost out of my black. Pour it a little bit, make it move a little bit more. Okay, you'll notice I'm getting a bulge in the center. That's because this canvas is small, it's sitting on one cup. Now, I could take my stick and I could just run it through. So this is another method. So you see what's happening is I'm getting these ribbons of the color. So I'm not mixing the paint, I'm just pulling the paint through. So I'm getting a totally different look than what I started with. It's fun to do. It's knowing when to stop. Okay, I'm going to stop. Now the sides need some I put a fair amount of paint on my finger so it'll run, as opposed to just sort of painting it on. Okay. So just run my finger in here to get rid of some of the drips. Again, the gloves are a good thing, believe me. Okay. That's looking pretty cool. Now, what I want to do is, because I've still got some paint left over, I'm going to take, you can't see what I'm doing, I'm off camera, but I've got another work table over there, and I am just going to pick this whole thing up, and I'm going to transfer this onto a piece of deli paper. Actually, I'm going to put another cup down so it can continue to drip, because I want to use this paper as my, to create an acrylic skin. So I wonder how much luck I'm going to have if I try to no, I already take the whole tray. So I'll be back in a second. So I've transferred my piece over into my other table, and one thing I forgot to try with that, because I added that silicone, I forgot to torch it. and I just torched it and I didn't get any cells. So c'est la vie, but I like the way that the final product looked, so it's okay. So I have my pseudo faux freezer paper down here, and I've got the drippage from that, and I want to use up whatever's left in here of my paint. So I'm just going to pour some more of it on this. Turn that one upside down, let it drain, and I got some white left, so isn't this a wonderful mess? Messy, messy, messy. Didn't get much out of that. Okay. And I got a little pewter left, so we'll just stir that a bit and pour it in. And you know, just for fun, because this is sort of like finger painting for adults, I'm just going to, I got a little bit left in here, I got a little bit left in there too, might as well throw it on. I definitely have to go out though and see if I can get some real freezer paper, because a bigger sheet of this without those holes in it would work much better, I think. But for now, what the heck? Let's draw swirly patterns. This will probably come off in pieces when it dries, which is fine. I could do this all day. It's kind of relaxing. It's fun. Okay, there we go. That'll take a day or two to dry. You don't want to be too impatient with acrylic skins because they do take a while to dry. But anyways, that's an introduction to pouring. Now, other people do it other ways. This is just the way I'm doing it. It's fun, it's experimenting. I think that's why I like it, because you're mucking about in paint and having a good time. And we'll see how all of this turns out. I will, in a future video, once those are dry and I varnish them, I'll show you what they look like from that, and we'll see if this works as well. But for now, that's my first video on acrylic pouring. I hope you learned something from it. Don't be afraid to try it. It's a lot of fun. And you know, really, every piece that I've made, I like some better than others, but they're all kind of fun. So give it a try. Have some fun. We'll see you later.